Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Have you ever got into a situation where you got in, but at one point you couldn't get out, even though you wanted, and it was mainly a ego issue, not necessarily that you will lose financially or anything like that. It was an ego. Well, I think that's exactly where United States of America, or the owners of the United States of America, are right now. I think they kind of want to, stop the Russians from going further, but they don't know how. Now, that's a theory, obviously. If you remember when Tucker Carlson interviewed Putin, Putin said that I think that the West doesn't know how to get out. They want to get out. My information tell me that these guys want to get out, but they don't know because they want to save face. And Putin said, well, just try. We're going to work together. So what's going on here? We have 3 articles here dealing with the same issue. And the issue is Putin will smack the West if the West uses Russia's assets that I think they went already too far, froze. So Russia has about $300 billion worth of assets frozen in Western accounts, Western, whatever they have, investments and properties and who knows what else. About 300 million. These weasels froze them. I thought it was illegal, but nevertheless, Russia said we're going to retaliate, and they will retaliate by hitting the banks. Putin is going to hit the West where it hurts the most, which is the banks. The banks are in charge. Therefore, you hurt them. What are the banks going to do? Send the military, the Western military, like they always do. Remember, the U.S. military is paid by the taxpayers, supposedly. But it works like the bully boy of a mafia guy, a mafia boss. The mafia boss, you can think of the banks. And the banks use the bully boy to go and use a Tommy gun, okay, and do a little bit of dirty job so these guys can come and take over. That's the way it is. American military is used by those guys to fix things in the world so they can get in and, how do you call that? Enslave, put other countries and nations in slave. They enslave them in chains. That's what they do. They're going to help the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank are going to come and help you at an interest. And in the meantime, they take everything you got. So I have here 3 articles. Unfortunately, I will not split the. I will not share the screen with you because I'm trying this here, so I can show you what's behind me and so on. And a very nice resort, let's put it this way. And let me show you these 3 articles. Talk about them. I'm going to show you anything but me and the background and the beautiful sky over there. I have 3 articles, one from Sputnik. I'm going to read the title. This is from yesterday, actually, from the 23rd of May, 2024. You can find it on Sputnik if you have access. Where I'm at, I don't have access to Russia today because they protect me from being propagandized because I'm a dumbass, okay? So Sputnik, Putin signs, I can access Sputnik though. Putin signs decree on compensation for U.S. damage to Russia central bank. So let's see what the compensations will be. Hurting the Americans. That's the one. And I'm not gleeing. I'm not happy about it. But I think those guys in charge of us are harming us. So the Kiev Independent, May 23rd, says, this is the headline, Putin signs decree authorizing confiscation of U.S. companies, individuals in retaliatory measure. Now, Kiev Independent will make it obviously sound more than it actually is. I realize that by going around, and whenever I read an article and they take it from an American media company, they always go like 3 times more, how do you call it, worse, let's put it this way. More dramatic, that's the word. And the last article comes from Reuters, and the same date, yesterday, the 23rd, Putin decree outlines Russian response to any U.S. seizure of frozen assets. That means stealing their assets. So let's start with the Reuters, okay? And then we're going to go to the Ukrainians, and then we're going to clarify with the Russians. Let me put my goggles on. Russia will identify U.S. property, including securities, that could be used as compensation for losses sustained as a result of any seizure of frozen Russian assets in the United States of America, according to a decree signed by President Vladimir Putin on Thursday. G7 negotiators have been discussing for a week how to best exploit some $300 billion worth of Russian financial assets, such as major currencies and government bonds, which were frozen shortly after Moscow invaded Ukraine in February 2022. Unprovoked. These guys dropped that one. That's a crime now. It was a crime for some time. So let's see what else. Russia's ability to met out like retaliation if Western lenders seize its frozen assets has been eroded by dwindling foreign investment, but it may go after private investors' cash instead, officials and economists told Reuters this month. Thursday's decree stated that the Russian Federation or central bank can ask a Russian court to determine whether its property has been unjustifiably seized and seek compensation. That will happen. The court could then order for compensation to be transferred in the form of U.S. assets or property in Russia from a list that would be drawn up by Russia's Government Commission on Foreign Assets Sales. Good job, right? The decree listed security stakes in Russian companies, real estate, movable property, and property rights among the U.S.-owned assets potentially liable for seizure. Former President Dmitry Medvedev acknowledged last month that Russia holds an insignificant amount of American state property, not American, but European, and that any response Russia makes would be asymmetrical, focusing on private individuals' assets. Okay, so that's Reuters. It keeps going on, but let's go and see what Kiev Independent has to say. Putin signs decree. Okay, let's see. Russian president signed a decree on May 23rd authorizing the confiscation of assets of U.S. citizens and companies to compensate for Russia's assets confiscated by the U.S. The U.S. Congress recently approved the Repo Act, repossession, I'm assuming, that will allow President Joe Biden's administration to seize Russian assets in our name, held at American banks, and funnel them to Ukraine. Take your money, give it to whomever I want because I'm strong enough and you can't hit me. Well, I think the Russians will hit them back harder because remember, those guys are pussies. So once their little interest will be hurt, they will say, go home to mommy in their safe space and rub their little squeaky. The U.S. Congress, okay, Western countries and Kiev's other partners, they're not partners, have immobilized around 300 billion of Russian assets. The decree would enable Russian citizens, companies, and the central bank to appeal to courts that the seizure of their assets is unjustified. In turn, the Russian government could offer U.S. assets in Russia as compensation. Got it? All right, so let's go to the Russian article. Putin signs decree. Russian president signed a decree on Thursday that outlines steps for claiming compensation from the U.S. for the damage done to Russia and its central bank. The decree, titled, and I'm quoting, on the special procedure for compensation for damage caused to Russia and the Russian Central Bank in connection with unfriendly actions taken by the United States of America, was listed in the official legal database. The decree allows the state and the central bank to seek redress in court if U.S. actions result in unlawful losses of property. Property of the United States or U.S.-linked individuals in Russia, including citizens, tax residents, and their associates, may be used to generate compensation for plaintiffs. All right? So, what do you think? Let's stand up. Oh, what are you doing, baby doll? So, what do you think? Let me show you back here. I think that these guys will crack. Why will they crack? Because these are not used to be hurt. That's what it is. They have a very low tolerance to pain. Why? Because when you are used to be in charge, it's hard to go and see things from the other side, the other foot. When the foot is the shoe in the other foot, then it's going to be much different. So I think the Russians, when they're going to start accelerating their attacks on money and the banks, then I think not the government. Unfortunately, if the Russians, if the Russians attack the U.S. government financially, I don't want to hurt. Why? Because the Americans print money. The Americans get loans from the same bankers. Therefore, it's not going to not going to be work. They need to attack the banks. If you attack the banks, you hit the hydra right where it hurts. Until then, they will print money. They will make sure that their bosses, their friends, their banks will supply them with money with interest, and we are going to be at the receiving end. So remember, Russia, it's a nut, ball, too hard to crack. And they thought they will kneel Russia after the first sanctions. And if they didn't think that, that means they're idiots or criminal, thinking that they will. And remember, when that imbecile George W. Bush, the illiterate, the analphabet, remember the guy, dyslexic, whatever he was, and others, not very bright guy. Remember when he did everything that people would say, this is wrong, that's a lie. Why is he doing this? This is not morally. People die over there. We bring democracy based on a lie. We said, well, some of us said he did everything wrong. Like every turn he did the wrong thing. He was like making mistakes all the way, all the time. And I don't think that was the case. I think he did all the right things for the people in charge of him. He did everything that he was required to do by his masters. Not us. No, he made each and every turn against us, but for those guys. So the same here. With those sanctions, with this war in Ukraine, I think it feeds the masters. And again, we're going to be hurt. Not the banks. Not the banks. So the banks will hurt us. Not the banks. The Russians will hurt us. Not the banks, where actually the power lays. Banks, banks, banks. Military-industrial complex is used. They have some corporations over there. They're not the big players here. The banks are. Well, thank you very much for being with me again today. I'm pretty sure that the Americans will change something once the banks are going to be affected financially. Guarantee you that. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.